Thank you for joining us here on Something to Talk About. I would tell you that it is the Christmas season, and 'tis the season to eat food. And why not do it over at King's? We're going to feature today's kare kare. Isn't that is that the way? Okay, kare kare or kare kare or kare kare, however you pronounce. But they have this dish now, and I've never tried with the bagong, by the way. And because two Filipinos have now said, "Is there bagong?" Because if there's not,
salted shrimp.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And of course, you know John Rapadas, Dr. John Rapadas. He is a clinical psychologist for, is it the Division of Client Services with the Superior Court of Guam. And we're happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You also have a non-government practice, which is
small,
but keeps you connected to the community.
Yes.
John Rapadas is somebody who I've actually kept on retention for, I don't know, how long have I retained you? For absolutely zero transactions. There's no compensation.
No financial, but it's for you and for the community.
He does these, he does this, and we try to do this every year, to try to bring home some of the issues having to do with the season, and it's not always joyful, and it's not always merriment for people. So, you know, that's the other side of the season.
For this season, I think of I call it the ACE syndrome, ACE. So a lot of assumption goes into the Christmas seasons, right? A lot of the C would be comparing the past Christmases and comparing with other people your Christmases that get you depressed. And then E, the expectations of the holidays. Gosh, everyone's happy. Everyone's supposed to be rich and joyful. And when those things when you don't hit those marks, with your assumptions and you're comparing your expectations, some people have I call it holiday depression, kind of holiday stress, guilt, whatever you want to call it, but they're definitely not as happy as they think they should be. And I think the key thing is expectations. What they need to really expect is that this is going to be a stressful time, like they remember every year. A lot of times we have memories, just generally in psychology or in this field, we have memories that are actually changed. We change it. Like, for example, kids who I see that are abused, for example, would remember, oh man, we used to have a great holiday season, and now we're really depressed because mom is in jail or dad's in jail or etc. But when you really talk to them, they're like, was your Christmases really that good? And they start to really think about it.
Open up like they...
Because it's a defense that holidays was fun, but in fact, they've never really had a great time in Christmas, and they're just these times just remind them of the sadness that they've had over the holidays. And a lot of people look back to their childhood, their teenagers, and their adolescence, thinking that they should have those memories, they're happy memories, but they don't.
Does that sort of beget the next generation of that feel the same way? Your experiences, especially if you're a parent, whatever your experiences are, you're going to pass on that tradition to your kids?
And I think yes, and I think what it is if in general your holidays have been generally drama-free, and the times that you're enjoying are pretty much fun, then that'll be passed on to the kids, and those memories passed on. We don't worry about those folks because with stress and your ability to handle stress and the memories and the good times that you had, that'll kind of overcome those things. It's the people, the ones that we worry about are those that who have been hurt, injured, abused, have had a kind of terrible childhood and teenager, early adulthood experiences, whether it's in holidays or not, whether it's during the holidays or not, that what basically their foundation is shaky. Okay, it's a shaky foundation versus the one who has had no drama and kind of a fairly stable childhood or teenagerhood. Those we don't worry about. But the ones with the shaky foundation, we're talking even from birth on all the way up. Those are the ones that worry, because what happens was when they get into a stressful period, like the holidays, they're very high risk to hurt themselves or hurt others, and actually go into deep depression. So.
And that's the one. Those are the ones that it's deeply seated, and is it reparable, or is it?
I think. Okay, where they most get in trouble is if they just suppress it, and if they suppress their emotions, and it just comes out in spots of rage and anger. right? So that's worrisome because you get the two different reactions of those with those type of childhoods and teenagerhood. You get the ones where it's suppressed and rage comes out in violence. And then you got those who just suppress it all the way and they internalize everything and they end up just making themselves a victim. And they become so depressed, withdraw, and they isolate. They don't talk about it to anybody. And then is it any wonder and they end up either hospitalized for suicide attempts or
So that's how that plays
self-injurious
out.
behaviors.
But on the lesser part of that spectrum, though, a lot of people hide depression. They don't come out and they try to kind of go along with it. We see that in the office, maybe. But okay.
I think what we see. Okay, so that segment that we just talked about, that's really about 10, 15, 20% of the population. So we know with all the research that there's always going to be about a 10 to 20% part of the population that has suffered some terrible incidences and several situations in their lives that could make them very vulnerable to violence and stress and drug abuse. So by the way, was the other one. The internalizing, they end up numbing their pain with drugs and alcohol. So that's that other side we can talk about. But anyway, that's about 10 to 15 to 20% of the population. The other 80%, what we worry about mostly is if someone like you or me who, assuming we haven't had such an awful childhood, I think they have a pretty okay childhood. It's when depression and stress lingers is when we worry. So beyond several weeks, someone could be grieving a loved one. But it's that, oh, hey, come on, it's okay, they're having, get over it, and those type of...
Oh, that's the hardest thing to hear.
And it's okay in the sense that, because we don't know what to say when bad things happen.
Right.
But when you start to worry, it's like, this person is kind of missing work still several weeks after. They're not eating, they're not their happy, jovial self. So we worry. So folks can slip into a clinical depression whether they have, terrible circumstances as childhood or not. It just happens sometimes, and I always think of depression as similar to physical illnesses. I always say mental illnesses and physical illnesses are very equal. So in the sense that someone can develop a seizure disorder, it doesn't matter what age. I learned that just recently. I was talking to a neurologist.
They can what? They can
develop like a seizure disorder out of the blue. You're always thinking about someone who has epilepsy, right? And you think, oh, that's in childhood. Everyone talks about epilepsy, but someone could be 52 years old and develop seizures because the brain is very complex. So in the same way, a lot of times mental illnesses can just not come out of the blue, but come out surprisingly for people who haven't had those quote unquote terrible past.
So
that's what we worry and we look for.
Is this depression is it signature to Christmas season, or are you saying that you have had issues all throughout the year?
It's throughout the year because why? Because as we get older, we have deaths. As people that we love pass away. So it's the anniversary stuff that is the ones. Doesn't matter what part of the season. Of course, Christmas is a big part of it. Thanksgiving, Easter, these anniversaries. These are the ones that get people. So let's say we have a loved one who passed away in April. It has nothing to do with Christmas or any holiday season. But people get into a depression when the anniversaries come up, when the date comes up. Sometimes if your loved one passes away, sometimes sudden deaths.
Oh, that's the worst, yeah.
And it happened on a Saturday. Actually, every Saturday is it's actually not a great time for these folks. And obviously initially that's gonna be bad, but if they're starting to go weeks and weeks and weeks, it's like, gosh, every Saturday they're still the same way. We need to seek professional help. Someone like me or a licensed therapist, psychiatrist as well. You have to help those folks get through it because the funny thing about mental illness, it clouds your judgment. You think you'll be fine, you're okay, don't worry about me. But you actually need someone to help shepherd you along the process because that's why it's a mental illness. Your judgment, your coping is really stressed out.
Well, we're going to have to take a break so that you can eat your food too.
Yeah,
and I want to ask about children. I think that's the other bigger deal. And then when you recognize that somebody does not have the resources to carry out the season, how do you approach that? I mean, nobody wants to be, the sad case in the office,
Yeah.
or, but we recognize it. And so what's the best approach to handle children and adults? We're going to take a break here so we can eat a little of this food from King's and then talk about that on the other side. I promise you it's going to happen. It'll end on a happy note.
Okay.
And we'll try to make that happen too. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Talking with Dr. John Rapadas, Juan Rapadas. Some people might know you as,
Or Johnny Rapadas.
or Johnny.
Yeah.
This is true. We're talking about basically the holiday blues, the Christmas blues. That's sort of a generalized term. It gets a little more succinct as you deal case by
Yeah.
case, and you can't necessarily label it as being depression manufactured by the season, right?
Right. I mean, that's the key right there. So blues, just the significance of it would be, oh, that's not clinical because it's just the blues, and that's how we should probably need to categorize this time of the year. For people who are generally just get really blue during this year for several reasons. We talked about expectations and comparing other people. The nice thing about Christmas is that it happens every year. So if you have an expectation that you're not the Rockefellers or the super richest people, iPads are pretty pricey. Your kid wants an iPad, it'd be like, well, at the time where you bargain and talk to your kids, and they should know the realistic expectations about Christmas. Not to say that Santa Claus, Santa Claus is so mean this year, he's not going to get me. Just say, well, Santa Claus, he decides how to give you a Christmas present, and we're all just going to work together and have a great holiday season. So it's all really about expectations and being able to say to yourself, Christmas is not going to ruin our lives the way that we can't afford anything and we're going to be so depressed. No, Christmas really, literally is not about the presents. It's not about how much did you get, how much chinchulli did you get. It's really all about family and just being together. The best times I remember, the best Christmases I remember, is not the cost of my presents. It's just laughing, joking, and having the simplest gift, a wagon. Mm-hmm. I think maybe a few blow-up things, a ball or something that's so easy to play with.
It's all kind of relative, though, wouldn't you agree?
It's relative, especially with 2018.
Yeah.
The challenges that all of us face, especially now, is those expensive gifts. I swear, video game systems could easily cost up to $500 to $600 to $700. Some of my clients that I see, I'm just saying, I even think I shouldn't buy these things, they're so expensive, but they get it, and then each game cartridge is like $59, $60, $70. So people have upped their games a little bit, and I think parents want to make their kids happy, and sometimes they go into debt. They charge too much, and one of the main holiday stresses that people have is the financial part. And you cannot go into debt during this time, and that's very stressful for a lot of people.
Trying to keep a regular financial lifestyle going.
Well, and the idea would be, the reason why people get stressed is, one of the tips that you shouldn't do is buy something during the holidays that you wouldn't buy in March or June or July. If you can't afford it in December,
You probably,
you can't afford it in June, you can't afford it in December.
Okay, so here's the other question about then Santa Claus, the pressure of children who believe, in this higher order of requests are taken in the spirit of meeting the guy, for the season, right? So however it's presented, they're encouraged to tell him what they want.
They're encouraged to tell Santa what they want.
And then clearly there's pressure to be able to prove that the request will be fulfilled.
I think that I have 3 kids, and we had to, like all parents, you have to kind of play it by ear. The Santa thing, Santa Claus's ability to get what you want, telling Santa Claus what you want. I think there's a certain age where they're going to realize that it's a little more complex than just say it's a guy in a red suit. That eventually they will find out some things about Santa Claus that they thought that didn't really match to what they thought it was. So I think that I think, you know what, it'll be fine. They'll be okay. I gotta tell you, one of the cutest things that I remember was my daughter was 7. She used to read, my oldest daughter, she used to read like a crazy person. She used to read 3 books a week, even at that age. So she was sitting down and crying to me at 7. I said, "Oh, why are you crying?" And I was see what she read was Christmas for the Parent's Soul. You know those books.
Oh gosh, yes.
Chicken Soup
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
Soul.
yeah, yeah.
So she read a little passage that talked about, and this is only for parents. This book was not for kids. It says, how did you explain Santa Claus to your? So she read it, and she started crying. And the gist was that Santa Claus wasn't this big red jolly person. That Santa Claus was in you. Everyone was Santa Claus. This just generosity of spirit, this kindness, this non-judgmental person who loves you and will get you things that you really, 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 really want. So she was crying.
She was a little depressed about that.
And then I just said, what you read is one person's
true.
story.
Yeah.
And that we all have to be Santa Claus. We have to pick up the mantle of Santa Claus.
And that's kind of how I explained it to the kids. He represents.
Ultimately, he is a historical figure.
Yeah, there is a Saint Nick, but
Yes.
he represents this Santa Claus. But
Right.
the other concept about Santa Claus is that if you are naughty and nice, and we've talked about this before,
Yes,
that
yeah.
every year there are parents that have this, and unfortunately the season started early because of traditionally happens right after Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving was early, like the 21st or whatever of December.
Yeah.
So the problem is now we've got a longer period of time, and a lot of parents use the man to bribe good behavior, and I have seen it where it feels like these kids are jumping over hoops all the time. No matter what they do, the bribe is hanging. So you got to pick and choose. I was thinking, pick and choose your bride, man. Don't just spread it out a bit, because every waking moment this child feels like they got this thing hanging over their head.
Well, and that's where it's so important where parents play this smart. Play it really smart. Use it to your advantage, and use it. Don't make it. Don't make this naughty or nice thing something that is all or nothing.
Yeah. It's subjective, and the parent is all. Yeah. Okay.
And I think that parents, because they know their children, hopefully, then they can, they can talk about, what is being naughty, and what is being nice. So I think if you just set down
the rules,
2-minute conversation.
See, but sometimes that just doesn't.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
that's good advice, though. Yeah, that's good advice.
Just set out the 3 or 4 things what nice means, 3 or 4 things that naughty means, and because you know your child, you know what they can do, what they can expect, so that you can allow for some mistakes, but they still will get basically what they want. A lot of kids, it's a funny thing with my kids, they wanted 4 or 5 different things, but what I did was eventually you get two of them. You can't get everything. You really can't, because you can't afford everything, and just say, well, you got 2 of the nicest things that you wanted, because you didn't behave, you got the good grades.
Yeah.
But I think you gotta lay out what is naughty and what is nice.
Yeah.
And those are for the younger children, of course. And as kids get older, they kind of figure out their own game.
How can we, as people who may recognize, someone is having a moment about this season, and particularly in children, because you can't have a whole lot of control over adults in this one. But I know we have a lot of programs, and nonprofit organizations do their best, to supply children with these wishes. But on the daily, the reality of life is that they're, you see them in the parking lots, you see them in the stores, you see them in the schools, you see, how to get involved without showing that you're getting involved, I guess, or insulting parents.
In other words, reaching out for folks that maybe have not, versus having, have not being able to get that PlayStation game system, not being able to get a bike. Nowadays bikes can be affordable, but there are still people who can't afford.
That's true.
A bicycle, the clothes, shoes.
Yeah.
So one thing that I know that churches do, and other church groups and non-church groups, they do set up those Christmas tree wish things. Every year we pull off at least a couple off our church's thing, and we see what the kids want, and it's heartbreaking sometimes. As simple as socks or shoes, and then there's people who want like an iPhone. So I'm like, $1,000 iPhone.
Yeah.
Socks and shoes that pay less.
So you know what the people are going to.
Right.
But
To do that, and also, I'm not one to encourage giving people who are needy. But if the Spirit moves you and you got a little pocket change, these people who are out there, they're desperate and it's very difficult.
We got a minute left to go. Okay. What's the cheery part of the season that we should remember?
Well, first thing is the eating, which is amazing, because I've heard it from Santa Claus and all the holiday experts that calories are cut in half usually for the Christmas season.
Yeah, sure they are. Let me just take a bite of this pancake.
The food is good.
The food is good.
The food is good. People are cheery and so generous around this year. We hope to say, let's host Christmases all year round. But literally, this is a time we can count on that to be.
Okay. So don't be afraid to show that
Don't
emotion.
be afraid, and make sure you get those quiet times of rest. Take your deep breath. Use the Calm app, whatever you want to do, and just realize and look at all the things that you have versus things you don't have.
I like that. Thank you, my friend.
You're very
As
welcome.
usual, my annual clinical psychology happening right here at King's. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again on Something to Talk About.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.